Okay, so 12 cranial nerves. I'm going to run through this as fast as I can, and I am not going to go off on a tangent because this is just a short story of one specific topic that you're going to need, quite a bit actually. So I'm glad that I'm able to break it down piece by piece. So let's get going. Top right hand corner, really quick. These are the 12 cranial nerves that create a face or a creature of sorts, based off of the number of the cranial nerve to help you remember. Remember how I said that the ears look like number 8? Well, boom, there it is. Literally ears 8. I don't know if that helps you. I appreciated it when it was my time a billion years ago. So look at that. And when you're ready, move on to the next slide. Now, here's the big picture of all of the 12 cranial nerves, where they stand essentially: olfactory, optic, oculomotor, trochlear, trigeminal, abducens, facial, vestibular, cochlear, glossopharyngeal, vagus, spinal accessory, and hypoglossal. So, there are sensory functions and there's motor functions with these cranial nerves, and then some have both. So sometimes you need to know these things, especially when you get into the med-surg 2 territory. So here we go. Here's my mnemonic. I have a sentence to give you. Have fun with this. Some, olfactory, say, olfactory, or optic. Marry, ocular motor. Money, trochlear. But, trigeminal, my. Abducens, brother. Says, vestibular cochlear. Bigger, glossopharyngeal. Brains, haha, you thought I was going to go dirty with it. I can't. That would be bad. Bigger brains matter more. So, some say marry money, but my brother says bigger brains matter more. Perfect. What does this mean? This means sensory, sensory, motor, motor. Both sensory and motor. Motor, both sensory and motor. Sensory, both, motor, motor. Boom, goes the dynamite, and now you have it, and life is peachy. Also, there is a mnemonic to memorize all of these in a line. I am going to not do that. I'm going to let you give it a look-see, and you determine what works for you, because I'm not getting in it, and you'll know why when you give it or whatever kind of search engine you give it, right? So there's that, and let's jump to the next slide and go through them one by one. All right, so olfactory nerve, cranial nerve 1. I always say smells like an old factory, because olfactory, they sound nearly alike. Up top, you need to know this information, and what the functional assessment looks like, and you also need to know what the smell or puff test is like. Also, these are the other points that you need to know related to cranial nerve 1. These are all of the things that I have seen in the past related to a question on your exit HESI or your NCLEX or one of your standardized tests. And remember, I look at these all of the time because this is what I do to plan the statistical data that is going to plan how I'm going to do these lecture series and workshops with you. So I've looked at far more than I should ever look at, and these are the ones I all see in common related to cranial nerve 1. Now, let me narrate a little bit of information that I can tell you that is in addition to this that I feel like is important. So for those of you who are learning early, if you don't understand all of this, don't freak out. It's cool. We're going to get there. Just keep moving forward, keep trying to pick up pieces and parts. And I'm going to narrate a little bit simpler because you might be in my health assessment class looking at this, right? So the olfactory nerve, well, it transmits information regarding a person's sense of smell to the brain. Okay. When an individual inhales a fragrant molecule, for instance, the olfactory receptors within the nasal passage send those impulses to the cranial cavity, which then travels to the olfactory bulb. All right. So this would be the equivalent of me leaving my house to go to the bus stop. down the road. All right. Then specialized olfactory neurons and nerve fibers, they meet with other nerves, which passes to the olfactory tract. All right. At this point, I'm at the bus stop. I'm hanging with my homies, and the bus just gets here. All right. The olfactory tract then travels to the frontal lobe and other areas of the brain that have a role in memory and the notation of different smells. So this is me hitting every bus stop, picking up all the kids along the way, right? Like, there's Reggie, he's a linebacker, and he's legit cool, and he loves science. And let's see who else. This is, I don't know, Chloe, and, you know, she's really good at choir. I'm trying. I didn't have any friends in high school. Duh. It's pretty obvious. I'm a nerd. Who wants to hang out with the nerds? So this is kind of how I see it in my head, right? Like, these are all the little people that are just kind of the people that you always think about when you think about high school and good times, right? Supposedly. So that's kind of how that works. And then from there, it is dropped and distributed. That memory receptor is then triggered so that you have a long-term memory associated with the smell. Which is why when we drive down the road and we smell a skunk, we know, oh God, there's a skunk that just got hit on the side of the road. Terrible example, but there you go. Here's one. Okay, so legit funny. Everyone tells me I can always tell when you're in the building because I can smell you. How weird is that? Everyone always says that. There you go. Perfect. So I started off with a skunk and I ended up with my signature perfume, which I will not tell anybody because it's mine to have and only mine. And you guys know when I'm there, and it makes you feel cool, and that's cool. I appreciate giving you guys a little bit of comfort even for a moment. So read all your information, jump to the next slide. Let's be done. Okay, how do I remember optic? Well, friends, it's cranial nerve 2, and there's how many eyes theoretically? Bum, bum, bum. There you go. There's your hack for 2. Again, all of the information that you're going to need, respectful to how we assess things, what we would find in dysfunction, and what the disease process would be. All of this is advanced information for your NCLEX and your exit HESI that I will absolutely tell you if a cranial nerve that has anything to do with optic nerve is going to pop up. This information is the information of all the information in the whole entire world that you are more than likely going to need. Okay, just because I see it so many times. So here's all that information. For my people who are coming from health assessment, who are reading these things and trying to make, headway of all of it. So basically the optic nerve, it transmits information to the brain regarding a person's vision. Very simple. So when light enters the eye, it hits the retina, which contain rods and cones. Remember, rods mean rays, right? Or light, which is why when you see at night, you don't see in any color at all, right? And then your cones have to do with your color. So CC, RR. Rays, rods, C cones, right? Easier that way. So those photoreceptors translate signals from light into visual information for the brain, all right? The cones sit within the central retina, and they have a role, like I said, in color vision. So conversely, the rods are going to be dealing with the peripheral retina and the non-color vision, all right? So the photoreceptors, they carry signals and impulses along nerve cells to form the optic nerve. And most of these fibers of the optic nerve cross into a structure called an optic chasm, all right? That optic tract then projects to the primary visual cortex in the occipital lobe at the back of the brain, all right? Which is why if you get knocked in the back of the head, you might see stars that go black. Things might just go into just dark for a hot minute. That's why when you bleach your eyes in the sun, even though it has nothing to do with impact into the occipital lobe, you also bleach. All right. So, and you have that blackening until, that vision then corrects itself. It's just a mechanism to help with not snapping into a change in acuity so fast that it knocks off your equilibrium, if that makes any sense. So I think that's all I've got to tell you about that. That's super important. But yeah, know these pieces and parts. You should be good. And then let's bump to the next slide. All right, when we talk about number 3, 4, and 6, we kind of talk about them all together because 3, 4, and 6 have to do with different field tests to test different parts of the eye movement, which also could mean different problems related to the dysfunction of those movements, right? So if I move a certain type of way, it's going to be deficiency of cranial nerve 6 versus 4 versus 3, all right? So this gets really hectic. And most of your questions are not going to get that hectic. So I'm going to keep it on the NCLEX hectic level. And then I'll bump it down as I move from, a potential person who's listening to this. So for my exit HESI people, my NCLEX people, what you need to know is everything up top is how you assess and test for these. All right. These are going to include 3, 4, and 6. All of these that I talk about whenever I get into 3, 4, and 6, all right? All of this information is important, specific to cranial nerve 3 only, which is ocular motor, all right? So then, let me think about this for just a second. I'm trying to see if I have a hack on this. I do. You ready? So it's a weird one, but just go with it. So cranial nerve 3. How do I know that it's cranial nerve 3? Well, there's a 3 right here in motor. There's my 3 if you do it sideways. So, yeah, there you go. That's how I would use that one, just because I got nothing else. You got 4 O's, so that's not going to work. I don't see anything else that's super fun. If you find something, let me know, because I'd like something better than that dumb hack, because that's all I got right now. But hey, it differentiates, so it technically works. Again, all of this information is important. Respectful to number 3 only, the ocular motor nerve. So what does it do? It helps control muscle movements of the eyes. Yeah, of course. So the ocular motor nerve, it provides movement to most of the muscles that move the eyeball, and the upper eyelid, which is the extraocular muscle. All right. The extraocular nerve also helps with the voluntary functions of the eye. So there's a sphincter papillae muscle that automatically constricts to the pupil, and it allows less light into the eye in bright light conditions or brightly lit conditions. So when it's dark, the muscle relaxes to allow more light to enter. So this is kind of its function, right? Another function is when it carries, or when the ciliary muscles, they help the lens adjust to like short range and long range vision. All right. It happens automatically when a person looks at a near object and then goes over to a far object. So those are the basics that you need for this cranial nerve. And then let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to keep doing it the way we've been doing it. These are the tests and the important pieces that you're going to know respectful to cranial nerve 4, which is trochlear. Also, all of this information that's written here, you can read. I don't need to reassess that information. I feel like it's all within everyone's level to understand. So in addition, here's what I got. So what does it do? Trochlear nerve plays a role in eye movement. It's kind of a boring one, to be fair, which is cool because this will be a shorter slide. So trochlear nerve is like the ocular motor nerve. It originates in the midbrain. It powers the contralateral superior oblique muscle that allows the eye to point downward and inward, and that's about it, right? So again, these are the tests that we look for specific to the cranial nerves 3, 4, and 6. These are the ones that always pop up. Usually the question is relating to how to test using this test, and you're going to need to know that it tests all 3 of them, so 3, 4, and 6. That one comes up often. Or which of these is not one of the cranial nerves you can test using this test. And it'll usually be the, 6 field of gaze or whatever. And then you would know to look for one that isn't 3, 4, or 6. And 3, 4, or 6 will be in your answer bank, that type of deal. I've seen it, adjusted that way as well. I can't remember, but it was one of the big 3, right? Because I've looked at, 5, 6, 7,000, 10,000 questions in my lifetime, probably. Yeah, probably, if not more. So it's, again, I pick up pieces and patterns. All this is there. So know the information, commit it to memory, and move on. Because like I said, this isn't a very long slide. All right, so we're at 5 now. So trigeminal. All of this information is important. Your assessment is very simple up here. What can I tell you about trigeminal? Trigeminal nerve is the largest cranial nerve. It also has both motor and sensory function. I talked about that earlier. Its motor functions help a person to chew, to clench their teeth. It also gives sensation to muscles in the tympanic membrane of the ear, which is why if you have an ear infection, it kind of feels like your jaw and your teeth hurt. Bum, ba, na, oh my God. Right. See, it all connects. We're all connected. Bum, bum, bum. So, let's see. So in sensory division, okay, let's do that. There's 3 parts that connect to the sensory receptor sites on the face. There's a maxillary part, and it gives sensation to the middle third of the face, side of the nose, upper teeth, and lower eyelid. Sorry, I had to read that page in my head for just a second to make sure because I was getting it confused with our other one, which was the mandibular. Mandibular part, it gives sensation to the lower third of the face, the tongue, mucosa, the mouth, and the lower teeth. That's a lot, right? And then the ophthalmic part gives sensation to parts of the eyes. So the cornea, the mucosa, and the nose. Skin on the nose, the eyelid, and the forehead. Yeah, the forehead. And the forehead. The forehead. Hang on. I'm giving it a whatchamacall. Ha-ha! The forehead. Ding, dang, dong. Trigeminal neuralgia is a big deal, and trigeminal neuralgia shows up in the big 3. If you ever get a cranial nerve 5 issue, it is about trigeminal neuralgia. I am 88.25 repeated % sure, which is a joke because it really isn't 0.25. We might as well just round it to, okay, never mind. So, digressing. Know this piece. Trigeminal neuralgia is a common disorder of the trigeminal nerve. Causes intense pain, facial tics. I mean, I have had in my lifetime, listen, I have worked in many, many hospitals. I've worked with Cleveland Clinic. I've worked with Premier Health. I've worked with the bingo bangos, the big guys, etc., right? And I've done this in a large area. I've done it for the entire state of Ohio, right? I've gone beyond that realm as well. So what I can tell you from doing all of these things is I've had legit 3 cases. And remember, I'm neuro ICU. I'm neuroprogressive care, neuro ICU, level 1 trauma, 1,000-bed hospital, bingo, bango, bigos, right? 3 cases I've legit seen. And it is this creepiest, scariest thing. Now, there are different variations. I have some people who have mild to moderate, but I have never legit had a textbook case. And these guys in mid-sentence will go from talking to you like this to the most horrific, blood-curdling screaming I've ever heard in my life. Because it is just so that it feels like they're being stabbed in the face and it comes out of nowhere. There's no warning. You just hear legit blood-curdling screams down the hallway. You have to put them at the end of the hall because they're embarrassed and they don't want to be seen and people are walking by trying to figure it out. So they beg to be put at the end of the hall, and I think it's fair too, and they don't want to wake people up. It's a big deal. So you're always going to see this type of patient related to this cranial nerve. And just get ready and look forward to it because that concomitant with all the other information I have on the slide means you are going to be very successful. All right, next slide. All right, so again, I basically just added the same information because we're at 6, which is abducens. And with abducens, it kind of, again, follows along with the same kind of testing, same kind of assessment, etc., etc. You can read the bullet pieces that I have here. No big deal there. Abducens nerve, what else can I tell you? They control eye movements, of course. It helps the lateral rectus muscle. This is important. Abducens and lateral rectus muscle, they usually come in the form of a question that is reminiscent of, you need to know that it is this muscle versus superior oblique versus da-da-da-da-da, right? So you have to know the two are connected. All right. One of the extraocular muscles, which is the lateral rectus, turns the gaze outward. All right. So the abducens nerve starts in the pons of the brainstem, enters the area called the, I believe it's pronounced Dorello's canal. Yes. Yes. I will buy that for $1. Dorello's canal. I think it's Dorellos. Yeah, it is. And then it travels through the cavernous sinus and then ends in the lateral rectus muscle within the bony orbit, basically. All right. So that's what I got. My introduction to the abducens. And next slide. All right, we're at 7. 7 is the facial nerve. 7's got a lot going on a lot of times. Again, it involves taste. It involves issues with dysfunction and what that can mean for the person. These are all the tests to make sure that we have normal functioning of the facial nerve, which is number 7. So here's what I got in addition. So let's see the facial nerve. Motor and sensory functions both. Facial nerve consists of 4 nuclei that serve different functions, basically. So one of them is sensation of the external ear. One of them is sensation of taste. One of them is movement of the lacrimal, the submaxillary, and the submandibular glands. Yeah, there's a whole lot of spig going on. Movement of muscles that produce facial expression. Oh my God, that's revolutionary. The facial muscle, it produces facial expression. I wish you could see my facial expression right now. Those 4 nuclei, they originate in the pons, the medulla, and then they join together to travel to the geninucleate ganglion. I think that's right. I think it's GENINUCLATE, geninucleate. Yes, geninucleate. I think geninucleate ganglion. Yes. Sorry, I haven't heard that word in a long time. So I saw the word in my head, but I was like, wait, is that? Yep, that's how we pronounce it. I'm done. All right, move on. Bell's palsy. This is a common occurrence. You're going to get a Bell's palsy and cranial nerve 7. Those always go together. All right, it's a disorder of the facial nerve. It causes paralysis on one side of the face and possibly loss of taste sensation. It freaks someone out because they literally wake up. Okay, so listen. So my mother was married to a guy, obviously, and he was my stepdad. Duh. Okay, I'm really telling you guys some revolutionary material here. And he was from a town called Logan, West Virginia, and they were different. How about that? But one of his nieces, she was a model. Not like a haha, you're on the Sears catalog model, like legit, she was a model. And she nearly lost her career because of Bell's. So she was like 24, and again, she was legit. Like you've seen her in well, I don't know, it depends on how old you are, but if it were in the 90s, 1998 to 2000 and something, you would have seen her on something in your supermarket, right? Like whatever that was, minus the National Enquirer, because she was legit a really great gal. And she woke up one day, boom, Bell's palsy. Who would have thought, right? It was awful. They wondered if it was ever going to come back. I remember them having those conversations. Is her face going to be frozen like that forever? What is that going to mean for Elite, which is the company that she worked for, the agency? So it was like, all right, what does that mean? And there was big discussion, and she ended up being fine. Life was peachy. She's, doing well for herself, blah, da, da, da. But yeah, that was kind of a crazy, kooky thing that I just remember because, she was theoretically a cousin of sorts, but, other than the holidays or whatever that looked like, or maybe once a month we'd see each other, but she was just that really legit, cool kind of second cousin vibe. And that happened to her, and it was quite tragic, but it turned out fine. Now we know Bell's palsy, we can usually reverse through immunoglobulins and things of that nature. But the big pieces and parts you need to know about all of this is 7, facial nerve, what it innervates, how to test for it, and know that Bell's palsy is directly associated with this cranial nerve. And then you should be good. Next slide. All right, we're almost done. Vestibular cochlear nerve. So in addition to these points, it helps with the person's hearing and balance. So the nerve contains two components, the vestibular nerve and the cochlear nerve. The vestibular nerve helps the body sense changes in position of the head with regard to gravity. The body uses this information to maintain balance. So the cochlear nerve helps with hearing. So the inner cells, those are like hair cells, and the basilar membrane, they vibrate in response to sounds and determine the frequency and magnitude of the sound, all right? And those hairs, they receive that information and send it along the pipeline. So those fibers, they combine with the pons and exit in the skull via the internal acoustic meatus in the temporal bone to receive that information and then understand the reception of that speech. Okay, so when we talk about cranial nerve 8, vestibular cochlear, we always talk about balance and gait. This is the bigger one. So they're going to talk about what is the test that we test to see if someone has a dysfunction of cranial nerve 8. Well, it's pretty simple. I have them shut their eyes and I have them lift one leg. And they usually sway a little bit. That's kind of riding the line. But if they box step, they're done, right? Any significant swaying is questionable for a positive result. So make sure that you understand those pieces and parts, because vestibular cochlear, they oftentimes use the idea of balance and gait as their question of choice. Next slide. All right, so glossopharyngeal, the nerve possesses both motor and sensory functions. Sensory function receives information from the throat, from the tonsils, the middle ear, the back of the tongue for sure. It also holds a role in the sensation of taste in the back of the tongue. Okay. Motor division provides movement to a muscle that allows the throat to shorten and widen. It's called the stylopharyngeus. So stylopharyngeus. No O, U-S. Okay, yeah. Stylopharyngeus. And that's the name of the muscle. And then the glossopharyngeal nerve starts in the medulla oblongata in the brain and leaves the skull through the jugular foramen, which leads to the tympanic nerve. And that's all I got for this. Know all these pieces and parts. Hoarseness is usually what we talk about when we talk about this nerve. I'm going to be honest with you. This is, if you got to memorize all of them, number 9, I've seen the least, to be quite honest. So I hope that helps. Next slide. All right, so the vagus nerve, it has a range of functions. It provides motor, sensory, parasympathetic functions. Sensory part, it provides sensation to the outer part of the ear, to the throat, to the heart, to the abdominal organs. It plays roles in taste sensation. The motor part, it provides movement to the throat and the soft palate. I mean, this bad boy is on fire. So the parasympathetic function, it regulates heart rhythm and innervates smooth muscles in the airway and the lungs and the gastrointestinal tract. So I always think about 10. And again, 10 innervates the parasympathetic functions. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. We're out partying, yo. And again, what do we think about when we think about vagus? We think about X, because what happens there stays there. So that should be easy to remember of your cranial nerves. So what else can I tell you? Vagus nerve. They use vagus nerve stimulation therapy to treat various conditions like epilepsy and depression and anxiety. That comes up every now and again. And I think that's about it. So next slide. Oh my gosh, I totally have 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes before I have to get on Zoom. So let's see if I can do this in 5 minutes. All right, accessory nerve. What can I tell you? Provides motor function to some muscles in the neck. Sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscles are the big ones. Allows a person to rotate, extend, flex the neck and shoulders. All right. So spinal accessory nerve 11. Remember, I don't know. What does that mean? That means when someone literally makes the shrug of I don't know, with their arms laying the way they are, it makes the number 11. Oh my God, revolutionary. So that's how you remember this, number 11. So sternocleidomastoid, I told you about the rotation, extension, and flexion of the neck and shoulders, and how we shrug. Accessory nerve separates into spinal and cranial parts. The spinal component, it starts in the spinal cord. It travels into the skull through the foramen and magnum, the hole I was telling you about, at the very center that connects the two. From there, it meets the cranial component of the accessory nerve, and then it exits the skull along the internal carotid artery. Okay? And then the cranial part of the accessory nerve combines with the vagus nerve. All right, let's see if I can get through 12. Hypoglossal is pretty easy to remember. It is motor nerve. It supplies the tongue muscles. It originates in the medulla. So disorders of hypoglossal nerve, they can cause paralysis of the tongue. It most often occurs on just one side though. So that is hypoglossal. And of course, what is the test that we need to do is the other piece. Stick out your tongue, right? Inspect it for atrophy, expect it for asymmetry, et cetera, move on. It's 8:57. I got 3 minutes before I have to get on Zoom. This went really well. I'm super excited. I hope this went well for you guys. Bye.